The progress bar is loading right now. And okay, you can do it. Come on, Zoom. Try to sync to YouTube. You can do it, Zoom. It's that awkward moment that one. All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. I hope you all are having a nice day. I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies in April 2020, and so far we have accumulated over 14,000 buddies, so it's super exciting. And if you guys don't know what Design Buddies is, Design Buddies, it's a large Discord community. We have a lot of free events like this, a free mentorship program, partner with Amazing Design People list, mentorship, resources, and everything. And so for this event, I'll be going over brief logistics, and then after that, we'll leave it to Kelly and Sarah, and then answer some Q&A at the end and take some photos at the end as well for our Instagram story. And throughout this event, we'll also have a networking sheet. It's a Google Sheet that Jess will help us share in the chat, and you'll be able to enter your information and connect with other buddies. And we're super excited to have Kelly and Sarah on board with us today. Kelly is a UX design intern at Ombre Digital. She's also helping design some of our merchandise for Design Buddies, which is coming this week. So stay tuned for that. And Sarah is a product designer at CarMax, and they're both the Boba UX ladies. And we also had them on for formula for a sweet case study recipe before in December. The recording's on YouTube, and they're back with us again for another case study presentation about how to make a PowerPoint deck. So with that said, I'll leave the floor up to both of you.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, we kind of we briefly touched on like case study presentations, I think, and shared a template before, but we wanted to do like a deeper dive and show you like our tips and tricks for how to like make a good one. Let me share my screen. Okay. So many windows up, excuse me. Oh my gosh. Okay, there it is. All right, I'm gonna actually share. Do you guys see the screen? Okay, cool. Okay, so here is our formula for a case study deck with Boba UX. Yeah, so kind of briefly to go over like what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about like why we are even talking about a case study deck, our tips and tricks, the breakdown, an example, Q&A, and then like Grace said, we'll have time for photos at the end. So let's dive right in. Yeah, so we just wanted to share this quote first. I'm not sure who said it. I think this is a quote that Kelly grabbed, but basically saying, in design, be logical, search for the truth, and be clear, which I think is very important to be concise in design. Yeah, so talking about why a case study deck. Yeah, one important thing, the difference between like sharing a case study deck as a presentation instead of showing like your website where you have to scroll through is that you can kind of pick and choose like and display the important parts of your case study deck and kind of control like the structure. You can also control the flow of your presentation. So you can kind of like walk through your project with, I guess, like timing in mind, depending on like how much the like interviewer gives you. And then visuals, you can present like more images as opposed to like showing a lot of text. Or, and I think like last time for case studies, on your portfolio on a website, we talked about like kind of having a good balance. But with visuals, since you're able to kind of control the story more and I guess like lead lead the viewer to like what you want them to look at, you can actually use more images. And then, yeah, you can also like send a potential employer a PDF file or like a link to your case study deck to follow when you follow up. So they also have like that as a reference point. And also, I think it can make you like stand out and be memorable. And they can also like refer back to your case study presentation. Yeah, so talking a little more about the structure, you can display the main key points of your case study, like I said. You can tell a story in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. You can keep it as short and as digestible as you want. And reflection, don't forget to dive deep into the key takeaways from the case study. And you can like have more control over that too, or if you want to kind of like tweak your reflection compared to the portfolio case study, like you can like do that. And then the flow, like why is this important? You can control like exactly what you want to present to the recruiter. I can go a bit into like why that's important, but that's like one thing, I guess that's like really, really great about a case study deck. You can control the speed, presenting the deck at a pace that makes sense to you and to the recruiter or the interviewer. All right, there's a little bit of a lag. Yeah, and then visuals versus text. You can limit the amount of text and keep text to headers and subheaders and not use as much like supplemental text or paragraphs. You can limit we recommend like limiting it to 1 to 2 images per slide and refrain from placing like too many images on your slides. And be prepared to present, like review your notes on each slide before the interview. Try not to like memorize like your notes. So it kind of like feels a bit more natural and more of, I guess, a little bit of a discussion, try to make it more interesting. And then, yeah, coming to the end, like after the interview, when you follow up, you want to email the recruiter 2 to 3 days after. And then you can, like we said, save your deck as a PDF file, probably like most recommended format. And that way you can like, when you follow up, send a PDF file and like you can have your interviewers like download your presentation. Yeah, and of course, like inform your recruiter interviewer that you're emailing the deck that you just presented. And a bonus, kind of arguing more points for why else you'd want to like make a case study deck. You can control the narrative and tweak it based on what potential employers are looking for. So I guess if you realize from looking at the job description and talking to someone about this opportunity, they're looking for someone who has like experience doing like UX research or usability testing, then you can very much like kind of tweak the focus of, I guess, like your role and the work of the project to reflect that. And then you can show off your soft skills also. This is a great opportunity to show that you have like solid presentation skills, which are really important for designers and really just anyone just like is, yeah, a professional. It's really great to have presentation skills and to have good like speaking skills. And to also, another important point is that it can also show your ability to share your process, whether that be research or design. Just like it's really important soft skill too, and it shows that you can explain your thought process and your just your like how you think, which is something that a lot of managers are actually like trying to figure out when they like look at your portfolio and when they're interviewing you. And it's also another great chance to add some personality and pizzazz, of course, like when appropriate. You don't want to get too crazy if it's like more of like a I guess like a business, like professional setting. But if the company's like more casual, then you can sneak in a bit of more personality or include like project branding and like colors that you use for this particular project and make it look great.
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is you, Kelly.
Awesome. All right. So the next part is now we're going to be going into like the meat of the case study deck. So these are just some of the things that we recommend having on it, just from your case study, like a brief description or like an intro, process, research, and data. So like some graphs would be great, but just the image, like I wouldn't put like a lot of text, just like limit the amount of text you have. Some low fidelity screens just to show like your process, and some finish screens are like high fidelity. And lastly, I always like adding reflection, like adding like what you learned and things you can improve on for next time. And then next. Awesome. So some tips and tricks. It's great to like display important content for your case study. Also practice with a friend or family before the interview, but also try to make it as organic as possible. I know it's easier said than done during the interview, so that again, it doesn't feel like you're reading from a script. And to always add more visuals and less text, because this is visually more appealing. And then to share or bring up. So my method that every time when I would bring up a case study is that I let them know like, hey, I have a presentation. I can show you that I've done this project, a similar project before, and I would just bring it up during the interview. If it's like a video chat kind of deal. All right. And now I'll be sharing my case study deck with you guys. So if I can have control of the share, please. Unless you have it.
Can you just?
I can share
I'll
my
just
screen.
stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. I can share my screen. All right. Ready. Alrighty. Can you guys see my screen? Yes, awesome. So I'm gonna move you guys over here. Go to present. So this was a case study based on a game I made for Design Buddies Game Jam. It was a really fun experience, so I converted it into a little case study. You can also find the full case study on my portfolio if you like. So let's see. So yeah, like I said, it's good to have like a description or an overview of what you did and the why you did it. And for me, it was an experience. Like I've never done a video game before, so like I wanted to share that. So just having the chance to do something like this. And then so next I added like some research that I've done for creating the UI for the game. And so I know like this may seem overwhelming for someone, but I would just briefly go over like the main points. You can also clean it up too if you need to. And again, just like showing like the main research that I've done. It's also good for an employer or recruiter. And so, yeah, and I added some sketches just to show like my thinking process and why and how I did this. And righty, and then just going over like some brief finished screens that I've created for the game, which I think it's a good idea to show to recruiters because it's again like it shows your process and how you got here. Because earlier we saw like a very bland looking pause screen and title screen, and then it's like, oh, how did you get here? And then that's like a conversation starter. And then lastly, a reflection. I really simplified the reflection I originally had on my case study and just added like the main key points, especially in the key takeaways, and just a 1 to 2 sentence for like how I would move forward from that. And that's all I have for my case study example. So going back to the presentation, we have a few more slides if Sarah doesn't mind sharing again. Alrighty. All right, and so in our slide deck that we'll be sending out to everyone, we've added some resources like just ways to like tackle your job interview and what to expect in a UX designer job. But like we said, we will be sending this out to everyone afterwards. And then the next slide. Oop. The next, yeah. So then we have some goodie bags for you all. So you'll be getting the slide that I just created, so you can look over it and you can also improve on it if you think you can, add more to it. And then some Notion notes that we'll also be sending out. And then I found this article that I think will be useful to everyone, presenting your UX portfolio and just the steps on how to do so. This article is really great. It really dives into like the details of it all and kind of highlights the main points that we talked about today. And then next, all right. And now we're on to the Q&A. And I hope Sarah or Grace would like to join in as well.
Yeah, for sure. I can also help answer anything. Feel free to raise your hand if you would like to be unmuted and come on camera to ask your question. Or if you don't want to come on camera, that's totally fine as well. You can type your question in the chat and we'll be taking a group photo towards the end as well. And make sure you also add your name in the networking sheet to connect with fellow buddies. Oh, okay. So Ari raised his hand. So I'm going to unmute you so you can come in and ask.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
And I'm sorry if there's a little bit of background noise. I'm at the gym right now. I know. But anyway, so what I was wondering is, how does like a case study like this or a portfolio like this translate for someone who's more or who's specializing in like user interface over user experience?
Yeah, so for user interface, so some companies, they have specializations. It really depends on the company as well. So for me, I'm actually mostly in UX and product design, but for user interface, I would focus more on, so it's more visual. So focus more like why you chose certain colors, why you chose different type scales and things like that. So it's all about like showing your process and thinking and looking at, I would also showcase like other choices you've considered. Like it's all about like the double diamond, like diverging and converging on something, and that's something you do really common in companies. So for UI, I would showcase like different button layouts or different colors you explore, different visual aspects you explored, and then show like the pros and cons of each of them, and then narrow down to the final one and like why you chose that final one. So just like think about that principle of exploring different options and then choosing one at the end and applying that to like both UX, whether you're choosing different flows or choosing different colors for UI as well. So I would try to like showcase process and how you arrived to the final decision, what other options you considered. Oh, if you guys can't raise your hand, I don't have the raise hand option. Feel free to chat or DM me and I can unmute you or type in the chat and we'll be going in order.
Yeah, sorry, I can't see the chat, or I don't know how, and because I'm sharing my screen, but I was supposed to, that was supposed to be my job. So, but yeah, I agree with Grace. I feel like, I think depending on like whether you're more of a general designer or you're specialized in UI design or whatnot, I think that's important to show your thought process and to really, I guess, to show how you arrive to the solutions that you do. What I thought was a great point, and it shows like your thinking and like sometimes like your adaptability, and when you can like use like data or reasons why you came to those decisions is great too. Instead of like just saying like, oh, I just arrived to this because I thought it looked best, you know.
Or I thought it looked pretty, like that's the worst.
Yeah.
Can I ask so
yeah. Then it's important to make things look great too. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
Someone asked on the chat, Veronica, do you prepare a slide deck for every project that you featured on your website? So for me, like I had a couple of interviews. So like one of them was for a graphic design position. So I only prepared a deck towards that. So it really depends on like what you're applying to and what the interview is asking. And then I also prepared a UX one, and I also have like different types. So like it really depends on like the situation.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
and
have
then
one.
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, I was just going to help with that. Like, I don't think you need to prepare a new case study deck for each of your projects that's on your portfolio, because in my last interview, I actually asked. I was trying to like gauge like which project to talk about, and I actually asked them like, would you guys like want to look at something new that's like not on my portfolio, or would you like to look at some or like get like a more deeper dive into one of the projects that you already looked at? And they were actually like, oh, we'd like to see both. So sometimes like it's just like great to ask, and I think it shows that you care about like what their interests are. But yeah, like Kelly said, I have one. I mean, I've only been like applying to like UX design, product design roles. So I have one that's like more research based, and then one more that's like more UI based. So it just really depends.
Cool. I think Handika
Okay.
raised his hand next. So I'm
Right.
gonna try to find you. Oh, we're gonna search you actually. So I'm gonna unmute you, and then Therese will go next after that. And then we'll go with Ivy.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Grace, for the opportunity. I want to ask some question about research. How Kelly research? This is interesting for me because I have a lot of question about research. How do you research how do you research the products? Like you have go to the customer, like audience maybe talk about questioning something. The process how research.
So for that particular project, I reached out on Design Buddy's survey area, and I just asked people generally like, do you play video games? Like, what kind of video games do you play? And do you have time for like a 15 to 20 minute interview? And I prefer like talking to people face to face on Zoom or Google just to chat with them. And that's kind of like part of my research process. And I would record it. And of course, I'll let them know that I recorded. And then I would synthesize that information afterwards. I don't usually take notes during an user interview process, just because like I like to look at people and see their reactions. But that's usually how I would research things. And like for that particular game, I was looking for other video games that were similar, and I would ask people if they played that kind of game. So it really depends on the project, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I typically do both market and user research. So understanding users and their pain points, and also understanding like what kind of products that are out there to get inspiration from, and also not like reinvent the wheel, not try to do the same thing again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've also like deployed surveys to kind of, it's more of like an exploratory like research, and like from the answers on the surveys, like if like the survey taker was willing to be reached out like for a possible interview, I always like leave that question in there. So that's an opportunity to like reach out to them if they like had some interesting points, or like I wanted to know more about like something that they said in the survey, then I contact them and then try to like see if they're up for an interview.
Cool. We'll go with Therese next.
Hello? Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
So Kelly, how long did it take you to put together that deck, like in general?
That particular deck, honestly, it took me about an hour, but that's only because I was organized from the very beginning. So during the whole design jam week, I was organizing everything on like a Notion board. Like, I was already like thinking, okay, so this is like the main objective, and these are like I try to keep like as much artifacts as I can. So like the wireframing and the high fidelity, just like everything as organized in a Notion deck as possible. And we're actually going to be sending you guys that reference too, so you can use for your own case study deck. But yeah, it took me about an hour, but I think I spent more time figuring out the colors and typography than anything else, because it's just the graphic design in me. It's like, it has to look visually appealing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. And Ivy in the chat asks, would you say that a case study deck is much more detailed than a case study on your portfolio? I know on your portfolio you really have a couple of minutes of recruiter's attention. So would the case study be more in depth and longer? So I would say it. So what my experience has been is I would have actually the full on case study on my portfolio. So people can like deep dive, because sometimes recruiters might be like super interested and want to read more. But at the same time, it has to have enough hierarchy, enough skimmability. So not too many words, but you can always click for more information on there. And for your case study, generally you have less text, but sometimes you can go more and more in depth into it. You can have more exploration. So it really depends. But it also on the role, like what Sarah and Kelly mentioned in the beginning, like knowing the company's culture and their values, and also customize your case study based on that. So let's say you're like wanting to apply for a gaming company, you would want to talk more about like gamification and things like that. And I'm just going in the order in the chat. There's like a lot going on. I have a really big window, so it's easy for me to read. So the person named user asks questions. What is the main resolution of presenting screens at companies? What size text do you recommend to use on presentations? Again, it depends. Size 16 is what I use minimal, because that's for accessibility guidelines for the web accessibility. Size 16 is a minimum font size that's accessible you see on the web. So start from 16, and I'll use the base 8 and scale up by that. So it depends for that. Really depends. But making sure you have enough contrast and hierarchy, and don't use too many fonts, and try to outline hierarchy by like bolding text or not bolding text. So Christelle asks, let me unmute you, because I know sometimes raising your hand might be not easy to find.
I asked the question and Sarah answered it, but I can ask it again so everyone can hear. So for 1 hour long interview, should we prepare 2 slide decks or extend 1 slide deck to fit that 1 hour long interview? And then Sarah said to do 2 slide decks.
Well, yeah, I would say it depends, but it depends on whether like that whole interview is going to be dedicated more to like your portfolio, like a review of your portfolio. But I think just to be safe, if you know that you're going to be going in for an hour-long interview, like if you have an idea of whether it's going to be like more discussion based or like they're going to ask behavioral interview questions, then you'll probably like maybe have time for 1 or 2. But if you know like the whole interview is mainly going to be talking about like your case studies, then I would prepare at least 2, maybe a third one just to be safe if your case study presentations are on the shorter side.
Okay, thank you.
Going to the next question in chat, Jay asks, how do you decide what order to present your projects given that there's usually only time for 2 to 3?
I definitely go with like the most important one, or the one you're most like passionate or excited about, or one that's like most relevant to the job that you're applying to, because you don't want to like run out of time or like have to rush to get to like the most important one.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And also at the same time, this is like coming from my experience interviewing from gaming and also FANG companies, is that usually you get grilled on questions sometimes. So on your making sure that when you're presenting during your portfolio presentations, prepare for questions like how would you measure success? How do you define success? How would you collaborate with your team? And how would success look like in your project? And focus on metrics like KPIs or conversion rates and how you would test out success. So that's what I personally got grilled on for questions. So make sure you address that as well from my personal experience.
They also get really specific, asking you like why you chose to go with like that design, or like why you use like chips instead of something else. So yeah, you have to kind of be prepared for them to jump in. And I think you should also like welcome them from the beginning of your presentation. Like if you have any questions or you like want like more insight into anything on these slides, feel free to like interrupt or jump in.
And always pause and let them ask
Yes.
questions in case, because they might be having a checklist of things they're checking off in their interview. You don't want to miss that too.
It might be cool, like maybe if there's like a good breaking point in between, to kind of pause and ask them if they have like any questions.
We have a lot of questions. I'm trying to keep them focused on case studies and more general ones. I'm just reading through. If any of you, Kelly or Sarah, see one you're interested in answering, feel free to step in as well.
Yeah, I was gonna read this question out loud, but I'm not sure how to say the name. But it was the newest one down here about what stage of the interview process can you expect to present project decks or portfolio pieces? So for me, it's usually towards the end. And when they ask, is there anything else you'd like to share with us? And that's when I kind of slide in the deck. I know, cheesy, sorry. I couldn't help it. It just came to my mind. But yeah, that's when I would bring it up. And be like, yeah, if you have time for me to show you this deck, and it'll only take about 10 to 15 minutes.
So
and that's when I would bring it up. Go ahead.
Okay, typically from my experience, usually for interviews, so I only have experience interviewing for internship because my full-time job was converted from an intern. We usually do a behavioral screening interview with like the recruiter or hiring manager or both. And then portfolio presentation typically comes after behavioral part. So I usually present everyone has different ways to do it, but I personally present a deck at first, and then just like talk with them at the same time. So in the beginning, so you should definitely have this as soon as possible, where people typically start preparing it for it probably like a week before they get scheduled an interview. And practicing with people, practice with your friends and family, people who have no context. So that's kind of like the recruiter coming in or the hiring manager coming in with no context. I'm just reading out the questions. If any of you, Kelly or Sarah, see one,
yeah,
feel free to answer.
I think this is an interesting question. Jason asked, would you ever combine projects into one deck? Like, for example, if you were interviewing at a game company and you have two decks focused on that role. So I thought that was interesting. I think it really depends. I feel like it could get a bit like complicated and confusing if you talk about like two different projects, but I think I'm not going to say like no, but I think there could be a way if you do it right where you can like just say from the get-go, like these are two different projects, but I just wanted to show you like these designs and just like do a deep dive into, I guess, like something specific as opposed to like talking about like the whole entire length of the project, because then that could get pretty long. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely try to split it up into both projects, but in the beginning, tell the interviewer that say like, I have two projects. By this time, I would like to go on to this project, and making sure you're staying on schedule. So that way they don't get confused that that's like the same project, because the interviewer is coming in with like no prior knowledge of what you worked on, or very little. Well, there's a lot of questions. We're trying to choose one.
Sabine asked, I don't think we talked about this one, right? She asked if there's a particular structure to doing a case study deck. For example, do you have to start with like introduction, target audience, and then end with insights and reflections?
Typically, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, typically yes. Well, it depends. I say it depends a lot because it really does depend. But typically you'll start, you typically start with just like a brief overview of your project, and then like explain what kind of platform you're attacking and like what problem you're trying to solve. And then you want to go into what research, how did you come up with that problem? Like what market need did you see? What user need did you see? And then you would kind of go through your brainstorming ideas. What ideas did you consider? Which one did you end up choosing? And why did you choose that one? Again, like the thinking process of evaluating different options. And then I would also showcase the different low fidelity sketches or medium fidelity or high fidelity wireframes you choose. You ideate it out and then choose one from there, and then kind of go through your final solution. And then if you did some usability testing, show that data and talk about how you tested it out and how you knew that their test results showed that it was a decision you want to go towards. So it's just like kind of like following the principle of storytelling. So beginning, middle, and end. The beginning, knowing the context of the story, middle, your explorations, and your research results and what you see. And I can also add another case study presentation I personally did as well in the chat too. I also walked through a bit of my case study, that one I did at EA. So hopefully that helps too, but that's the kind of structure I did. I focused a lot on storytelling, making sure there's a clear beginning, middle, and end, and taking the user through like a hero's journey, and also making sure that you have the settings and plot in place. It's been a while since I've done my case study, but that's an analogy I used.
I have more questions. I'm just like kind of going in order, but what I think this might interest some people. What platform is the best to use for presenting case studies? By platform, do you mean, I guess, like case study, or I guess like presentation platforms? I'm assuming. I think honestly, it depends like what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to like try to learn like the best tool unless like you have the time for it. But I've seen people like use Google Slides. I've seen people use PowerPoint and Keynote. It really depends like what you're comfortable with, because essentially, I mean, they all do a similar thing. I hope that answered your question.
I personally use Figma to do my case studies. The reason why I do that is because I have all my mockups and all the high fidelity stuff I did on Figma, so it's easy when you just drag and drop on there.
That's true.
And you can add Smart Animate to make things more interesting, but that's just another resource you could do.
Yeah, I've tried like Figma before, but I realized that I end up spending more time when I use Figma. So I've tried to explore different types, but I've used Google Slides a lot.
Now, Google Slides is a good one.
I started using Canva, but again, I just spent so much time with the colors and little graphics.
It's the little details that matter.
Yeah.
I used to just scroll through a PDF. That also works as well. A PDF. I created my slides in Google Slides or in Figma, export everything as PDF, and just scroll through during a presentation. Have videos. I have them open on another screen too, and share that. So there's different ways to do it. So just it comes down, just sum it up, the tool that you're most comfortable with.
Someone asked, how can you manage the flow of presentation without coming off as blunt if you're repeated or interrupted with questions? While presenting a case study to interviewers? That's interesting because I don't think I've ever had that problem. Usually I can just go through it and then they'll ask questions at the end, but that's interesting.
No, yeah, I've had interviewers like jump in and interrupt, but I usually don't have that problem. I think it's just like being courteous and like trying to answer their question as best as you can, and like hoping that you don't like lose your flow. But yeah, I think it's just like being honest and like upfront too. Like if you're like, oh, I lost my train of thought, like just say, oh, one moment, let me clear my thoughts. You know, just like kind of, I guess like in the same way, like when you talk about your thought process, like during a whiteboard challenge, how they like tell you to just say your thoughts out loud. It helps sometimes, like if you're nervous, like say, oh, I'm a little nervous. Let me collect myself, gather myself, and stuff like that. I think, I don't know if that helps answer the question.
Yeah, it's okay to say that I'm a little nervous because everybody feels that way too. And it kind of adds a sense of vulnerability, which is totally human. It's totally fine to say that. I like to say it's like, treat it like a conversation, going with the mindset like, oh yeah, this is a conversation. I'm also talking with the interviewer and things like that. And I would practice with family and friends and have them to ask questions in the middle too, just to get practice. Because I know it's like really hard getting interrupted sometimes, but over practice, it kind of gets easier from my own personal experience.
Yeah. And in that sense too, like when you do have your case study deck in front of you, it really helps to get you back on track because you have that like those visual cues. And if you've like practiced a bit, then you should be able to like quickly remember like where you left off.
And also in a virtual interview setting, they don't know if you have your notes open at the same screen. So
yeah. Yeah, with Google Slides, you can have like your notes like on the screen. They don't see it, but you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making sure you're placing your camera the right place though, so they don't look like you're not like having your eyes sideways. So or you can place sticky notes on a computer, just like making sure that you're looking at the interview the whole time. But yeah, virtual interview tips like that can help you.
Thank goodness for virtual interviews.
Yeah. It definitely takes out a lot of the stress, honestly, than in person. Another question that I just saw, how long did it take for you to become confident presenting the slide deck? I have to say I still don't feel really confident, but I try to make it like as a conversation, like I'm just talking to someone I know. So I think that's what helps. But confidence is built over time. So like if you do it a lot, you'll get that confidence. I kind of compare it to like my job at Starbucks, my other job. Like I'm very nervous when I make drinks for people, but as I keep doing it, I build that confidence and accuracy will come with that. And speed.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Me too. No shortcut to getting confident except practicing.
Exactly.
And if you feel more, I like to like, so I listen to like music that pumps me up before as well. That also helps me feel more confident. Or jump around in my room. Yeah, power pose. There's like that Y pose I always do in the bathroom before an interview. You like that and like Superman pose. But yeah.
It helps. And if it helps, like putting, I don't know, a picture of someone at the top of your laptop. I've heard some people like put googly eyes around their camera. So it's just like a little bit funnier, you know, and like reminds you that you're talking to a person. Because when you're presenting your slide deck, you look at the slides and you might not see their faces. So it really feels like you're just talking to nobody. So it helps when you like can visually see that you're talking to someone. You can.
There's a lot of questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you would like to come on camera to ask some questions. We'll be taking questions for another 10 more minutes, and then we'll be doing our group photo. There was some earlier.
I'm so sorry if I butcher your name, but I'm just going to pronounce it how it's spelled. Gurjinder Singh says, if the case study is surrounding a single important feature, is that better or worse than a case study about an entire app or website redesign? Interesting.
I don't think it matters at all. So I think it's just important to show your thinking, because I've seen a lot of case studies as well. And I also have a mix of a lot of different case studies. Like, for example, the first ever case study ever done was actually a redesign of a feature design for Discord. I designed a bookmark feature, and I presented that one in an interview. And I got jobs from that, well, internships from that before I converted to full-time. And that was fine. It was totally taking an existing app and designing one feature from it. It was totally fine because interviewers are just looking for your thinking. You don't have to come up with the whole product from scratch. I mean, you can, but you're like having an existing app can help you have already constraints there. And it's just about how you're thinking, how you solve problems, how you evaluate through them, whether it's like a whole product or a small feature. So yeah, it doesn't really matter for that. From my experience, also talking to hiring managers, they don't really care. As long as I can see your thinking, it should be fine.
Yeah, they really want to see like your problem, like how you problem solve. So if you like have a redesign and you feel like you kind of like have, even if you don't have like the actual like company data, if you've done like any like research or interviewing like for the redesign, you can kind of like show your thinking and like how you solve this problem, or I think that this is like a possible improvement like of the current design. I think that that's something that a lot of, you know, interviewers want to see, whether it's a redesign or whether it's like a small feature or a large feature. Great questions.
Oh, Jason asked a great one. How do you present confidential content in an interview, or should you not include that in a PDF deck? Never include confidential information, because if interviewers see that, then they'll be like, if I hire this person, will they share my confidential information? And so also for NDAs, it also depends on the level of NDA. So for example, at my internship at EA, I'm allowed to share my projects, but I can't share any numbers. So I had to like come up with fake numbers, but I also mentioned that in the beginning of my case study, and I have a statement I can share too. So never ever confidential information, but there's also different levels of NDA.
It's interesting that someone asked, is it okay to make case studies out of challenges or contests? Absolutely, because that's what I did with mine. Mine was from a game jam, which is pretty much a challenge. Yeah. So I just had to like kind of reinvent it. Like, how can I put all this information into a case study that makes sense from the game jam?
Yeah, even if it's like from a hackathon, it's like kind of great too to walk them through a case study where you worked with a team, because that's like basically what you're going to be doing in the real world, you know. So I feel like most hackathons, like you work with like developers and like other designers, so it's a great opportunity to kind of like showcase how you work with other people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also good to include like your team members in a slide deck, in a separate slide deck as well, and how they contributed, and in your presentation talk through like what kind of challenges you resolve with them, like how did they help, and how is your role a complement to the whole project as well. So showing that teamwork is a huge part of that, especially during like behavioral interviews too. Cool. We can take a few more. Feel free to type in the chat if you want to be unmuted. Otherwise, I'll keep reading off questions.
Yeah, if we skipped over your or you can type in the same question that you asked if we missed it. Is include Paratosh asks, is including prototypes as as GIFs as well a good idea, or should we use static screens to explain the flows of the user journey? I think it really depends. I've seen like some videos and GIFs like not work properly when I went to workshops at times. So I really think it depends. Like, do you have like good connection? Make sure and like kind of test it out when you practice to make sure it like looks and like works okay. But I don't see a problem like using those as long as it's like not too crazy or distracting. But yeah, I've like mostly in my experience like used like more static images, keeping it simple. But like if, for instance, if you like created like a great video of a prototype, or you act like your actual product is like live and you have a video of it and you want to kind of showcase that, then that could be a great way to present it too.
or even a screen recording too, just in case something sometimes goes wrong. During hackathons, I always prepare a video. I also download it on my laptop in case YouTube goes down. I mean, like, you never know.
And then, should you focus primarily on your role during the case study?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say yes.
You should, be clear about what you did and didn't do, and also be clear about how you worked with others. But yes, always your role.
Yeah. And if something that someone else like contributed to was vital or relates to like your role, or if you use like the data that they found, then I'd mention that. But definitely like how that was important to you and like what you got from.
We have 3 more minutes left for questions. Let's try to go quickly and get to as many questions as we can. So Samuel asks, what is a part of case studies that aren't commonly talked about but really important?
I'm trying to think.
I can answer too while you think. I definitely think showing data, showing how you would measure success. I feel like because UX/product design is all about balancing user needs and business goals. If you don't make money, then you don't have users. If you don't have users, they don't buy your product. And so showing I feel like a lot of new designers, they focus too much on the user, but also having actual data, like task completion rate, retention rate, and things like that, and how this overall relates to the whole business goal is really, really important. So I'll give my EA case study example. So at EA, my goal was to make it easier for users to find help. And why is that important? It seems very user-centric, but I also make sure to add that because users are able to find help easier on the EA help site, it will save the business more money, more time overall, therefore more money, because there'll be less tickets submitted by the users. And just relating things to business problems, super, super important. Don't forget the business goals for UX designers. Okay, so we have 2 more minutes. We have a bunch of questions. Let's see. Oh, Mayra, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, but Mayra asked, why do you recommend this situation? You did a lot of cool work during the internship or a short contract period. You don't get to see the results or impact. How do you speak to the results and outcomes when you don't get to see them? I have a personal experience actually on this. I can share. So for my internship last summer at Intuitive Surgical, I worked on a highly NDA project and I wasn't allowed to show anything. I was only able to talk in the very high level part of it. So because I wasn't able to show basically get into any details, talk about any data, I would just say, so my project, very high level, is to make a game to train surgeons to do surgery and to increase their training and to increase their hand-eye coordination. And I would talk about what I learned from an internship, who I collaborated with and how I collaborated with them, and how did my project results overall prove the hypothesis that gamification improves engagement in surgery training. And just talk very high level about what you learned and how you collaborate with people, but not actually showing any data, if that makes any sense. So focus on their personal growth from that experience. Because some companies are highly NDA, and it is not okay to talk about anything that is NDA, even though it's you're super proud of it. If it's under NDA, do not ever share that with outside. All right, so we're at last 2 minutes, so we can take our group photo now. If you have any more questions, I will try to, feel free to ask in Design Buddies as well and share a lot of our mentors, or Kelly or Sarah and I can also help out as well. Right now we can take our group photo. So you can stop sharing. Cool. I'll wait for everyone to turn on their camera. I'll count down 10 seconds. And after a group photo, we'll do our group wave for Instagram stories. So you can dance, you can wave, you can dab, anything you want. So group photo first, the static photo, and then we'll do our wave for Instagram story like we do at all of our events. So right, 10, 9, 8, 7. Feel free to like bring a plushie.
It's a long countdown.
So wait for everyone to turn on their cameras. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. I have one screen because I have a really huge monitor, so I can see all of you. What number am I on? I forgot, but 4, 3. Let me crop it. 2, 1. Say cheese. All right, now we're gonna wave. So feel free to. I love your plushies. See the panda. I see a baozi.
My plushie.
Nice. I usually bring this one on, but I only had one hand right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is my little buddy. I bring this on work meetings too, because people have pets on my team, but I don't have a pet, so I just have this.
So plushie.
All right, feel free to wave, dance, drink your coffee. All right, I'm just loading my Instagram, the Design Buddies Instagram. All right. Ready, set, wave. Hello, buddies. We are at Recipe for a Case Study event. Hope you all have a nice day and see you at our next event, buddies. Awesome.
So
Oh shoot,
fun.
wait, I got a notification. Oh, good, it's saved. All right, I was about to save it and like notification popped up on my screen. And I clicked on it and good, it's saved. Okay, cool. Thank you all for coming to our event. This concludes our event. If all the organizers can stay for a short debrief, that'll be great. Otherwise, make sure to connect with Kelly and Sarah, add your information to our network sheet, follow us on all our social media platforms. Our story that I just recorded just now is on our Instagram. And as always, stay positive and test negative.
I love that.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna steal that.
Of course, I say that to like literally everyone.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Test negative, everyone.
Yeah, test negative. Make sure, social distancing, all those practice measures, flatten the curve, all that good stuff. I'm going to stop streaming on YouTube as well. Make sure I don't forget. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.